consider a strange, almost unbelievable statistical paradox about the world, the world you live in right now. Because over the last century or so, global rates of extreme physical violence, starvation, and sudden traumatic death have just plummeted.
Right, they've completely dropped off.
Yeah, exactly. You live in the safest, most quote-unquote civilized era in the entirety of human history.
Which is an amazing achievement on paper.
Right. But here's the paradox. Alongside that unprecedented physical safety, rates of stress-related illnesses, chronic anxiety, and, well, autoimmune diseases have absolutely skyrocketed.
It's staggering, really.
It is. We are completely drowning in exhaustion and this quiet, gnawing sense of meaninglessness, which I think begs a central mystery for us to solve today in this deep dive.
Yeah, the big question.
Right. Why is it that as our bodies get increasingly safer from the outside world, they increasingly attack themselves from the inside?
It really is the ultimate paradox of modern misery. And, to understand it, we can't just look at chemical imbalances or point to some specific modern technology like smartphones or whatever.
No, it's way deeper than that.
Exactly. We have to investigate the hidden psychological architecture of civilization itself.
So how do we even begin to look at that?
Well, I want to invite you into an atmosphere that feels less like a sterile modern clinic and more like, say, a dimly lit, intense debate in a 1920s Vienna coffee house.
Oh, I love that vibe.
Right. We are peeling back the polished moral surface of the well-adjusted citizen to look at the seething underworld right beneath us.
It's stuff we don't want to talk about at dinner parties.
Exactly. The fundamental premise we are exploring here is that civilization, the very structure we celebrate as our greatest achievement, is not actually the cure for our unease.
Wait, so if it's not the cure?
The diagnosis we must confront is that civilization is the disease. It is a collective neurosis built entirely on a foundation of brutal, unending sacrifice.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when we talk about the sacrifices required to live in society, we usually mean, paying taxes, following traffic laws, giving up a bit of free time.
Sure, the mundane stuff.
Yeah, but you are suggesting something far more foundational.
Yeah.
You're saying we are sacrificing our fundamental biology.
Yes. We are amputating our core instincts.
Amputating. That's a strong word.
It has to be. To belong to a civilized group, a human being must constantly renounce their deepest, most powerful drives, specifically raw, unfiltered aggression and indiscriminate sexuality.
Right, the absolute primal urges.
Exactly. And the crucial mechanism to understand here is that an instinct is not merely a passing thought. It is real, quantifiable, neurological, and psychological energy.
So it's not just an idea in your head. It has mass, so to speak.
Yes. It demands discharge. When society forbids that discharge, the energy doesn't simply evaporate into the ether.
But, I want to offer some genuine pushback here.
Please do.
Because framing human nature as inherently violent and relentlessly selfish, it just feels overly cynical to me.
How so?
Well, look at how people behave during natural disasters. When a hurricane hits or a devastating earthquake strikes, the immediate response without any police presence isn't chaos and murder.
Right.
It's mutual aid. Neighbors pull each other from rubble, strangers share food. Doesn't that prove our baseline instinct is cooperative? That we don't need a heavy-handed civilization to suppress some inner monster?
It's a fair point that mutual aid is a beautiful phenomenon, but identifying it as our base instinct misreads the evolutionary timeline.
How do you mean?
Cooperation in a crisis is a highly evolved survival strategy. You band together because the external threat, the hurricane, is completely overwhelming.
Right, you need each other to survive the storm.
Exactly. But remove the external threat. Place people in a state of absolute safety and abundance, and watch what happens when individual egos clash over status, desire, and dominance.
Oh, so when the storm passes, the real underlying drives come back out.
Precisely. The raw, unrefined drives we're talking about are concerned with absolute, immediate gratification. If someone possesses what you desperately want, the primal instinct is to eliminate the obstacle.
Wow.
Yeah. So to live in a permanent group, that specific self-serving drive must be permanently exiled. And the act of exile creates a profound psychic wound.
So we are paying for our paved roads and our grocery stores with a continuous internal psychological bleeding.
That is the tragic bargain.
Wow.
The more complex and civilized the society becomes, the more of your natural self you must suppress. You are expected to operate every single day as though these intense, dangerous biological energies simply do not exist within you.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if society requires this massive, continuous suppression of our most powerful biological drives, how on earth does it actually enforce it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because if the urge to take what I want is that strong, a police force isn't enough. There isn't an officer monitoring my thoughts when I'm lying in bed or sitting at my desk.
No, there isn't. The enforcement mechanism relies on the most brilliant and frankly terrifying psychological trick of human development.
Okay, I'm listening.
Society does not need an external police force because it installs an internal watcher inside your own mind.
An internal watcher.
Yes. We refer to this as the superego, or the voice of conscience. We flatter ourselves by thinking of morality as an innate, noble compass. A philosophical guide to the good life.
Like we're just naturally good people.
Exactly. But in reality, morality is a highly effective, internalized system of surveillance born entirely from childhood terror.
Wait, childhood terror. Walk me through the mechanics of that. How does terror turn into a moral compass?
Consider the infant. A human child is born completely helpless and remains dependent for an unusually long time compared to other animals.
Right, we can't fend for ourselves for years.
Exactly. For a child, the loss of parental love does not mean emotional sadness. It means literal starvation and death.
Because without them, you die. Biological survival depends entirely on the caregiver.
Precisely. So when the parent says don't hit, or don't touch yourself, or don't be selfish, the child experiences a profound existential threat.
Oh, wow.
To neutralize that threat, the child's brain does something remarkable. It internalizes the external authority figure. The threatening parent becomes a permanent resident inside the child's own mind.
It's less like installing a security camera and more like developing an autoimmune disorder.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
Because the mind's defense system gets utterly confused, right? To protect you from the threat of being abandoned by society, it starts aggressively attacking your own natural healthy cells, your desires and instincts.
Yes, exactly.
And the most punishing aspect of this internal autoimmune response is that it doesn't just attack you for what you do, it attacks you for what you think.
Which is exhausting.
Yeah, you punish yourself with debilitating guilt for desires you never even acted on, because this internal watcher doesn't distinguish between wanting and doing.
That autoimmune metaphor captures the mechanism perfectly. The internal watcher demands absolute perfection and attacks the host for mere impulses, punishing failure with a cruelty that no actual parent would ever inflict.
It's ruthless.
It is. Now, to truly see the architecture of our world, we have to scale that mechanism up. Imagine millions of individuals, each suffering from this psychological autoimmune response, collectively projecting their internal rules onto the physical world.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
That is what human culture is. Religions, legal systems, and societal norms are simply macro-level versions of the internal watcher.
And because it's built on suppressing threats, normalcy is always defined by whoever holds the power to declare what is dangerous. It isn't objective at all.
Call on the slightest.
Like in the 19th century, if a woman refused marriage and wanted financial independence, the medical establishment didn't applaud her as a forward thinker. They diagnosed her as hysterical.
Right.
Her desire for autonomy was treated as a literal pathology because it threatened the social order.
Exactly. We see the exact same mechanism when men desiring other men were clinically labeled perverted and institutionalized.
Yeah.
These were never objective scientific descriptions. They were tools of control, dressed up in the unquestionable authoritative language of medicine and morality.
Just wielding power under the guise of science.
Yes. Deviance is rarely defined by actual harm caused to others. It is defined by the threat the behavior poses to the collective illusion of control.
And the ultimate irony here, which honestly answers so much about the hypocrisy we see in the news every single day, is that the most aggressive enforcers of these rigid norms are almost always the ones most tormented by them.
Oh, without a doubt.
The puritanical leader who preaches fire and brimstone against lust, but is secretly harboring massive repressed desires. They aren't just hypocrites. They are victims of their own overly aggressive internal watcher.
Their rigidity is the fragile shell containing their own unresolved inner conflict. This reveals the core of the collective neurosis. Society pathologizes human nature, demands its suppression, and then furiously treats the symptoms of that suppression, the anxiety, the rebellion, the paranoia, as if they were the original disease.
But that fragile shell can only hold so much pressure before it inevitably cracks. Because if we are constantly generating this primal energy and the internal watcher is constantly forcing us to suppress it, where does all that energy actually go?
It has to go somewhere.
Right,
But-
we established earlier that it doesn't just evaporate. What happens to the energy that escapes?
Well, to map where that energy goes, we need to understand the concept of a psychic economy.
Okay, psychic economy. What is that?
Think of the human mind as a closed thermodynamic system powered by two opposing engines. The first engine is Eros, the life instinct.
The life instinct. Okay.
This is the drive to connect, to merge, to build, and to create life. It is the binding force of humanity. But the second engine is Thanatos, the death instinct.
Wait, the death instinct. That sounds completely counter-evolutionary. Why would a biological organism possess a drive toward its own destruction?
Because the state of being alive is a state of constant, uncomfortable tension.
Okay.
The organism is relentlessly bombarded by stimuli, hunger, and desire. The death instinct is the organism's unconscious yearning to return to the absolute peace and zero-tension state of inorganic matter.
Like wanting to just unplug completely.
Exactly. It is a compulsion toward dissolution and unbinding. Now, civilization is incredibly effective at harnessing Eros.
It channels it into productive things.
Right, it channels our desire for connection into marriage, community building, and economic labor. But civilization cannot utilize Thanatos in the same way. The destructive drive cannot be erased.
So, if you can't destroy the energy, and you can't turn it inward without destroying yourself, it has to be exported.
Yes, it is redirected outward into the world. When the internal pressure of the societal watcher becomes too severe, the collective ego fractures.
And what happens then?
A society drowning in its own repressed chaos must engage in projection. The energy of Thanatos is hurled at a target. If we connect this to the bigger picture, consider the historical witch hunts in early modern Europe.
Oh, that's interesting. Because we're usually taught to view the witch hunts as a tragic era of religious fanaticism, or, just a superstitious panic about crop failures.
Right, but superstition was merely the rationalization.
So what was really happening mechanically?
Mechanically, the witch hunts were the symptom of a society overwhelmed by internal psychological pressure. The population projected its own unbearable, repressed demons onto highly vulnerable bodies.
Mostly women.
Primarily women, yes, whose marginal independence threatened patriarchal control. Burning them at the stake was not a judicial punishment. It was a desperate, horrific ritual of purification.
Wow.
The society was attempting to restore its own illusion of moral purity by violently destroying an externalized proxy of its own inner chaos.
We manufacture monsters on the outside so we don't have to face the monsters on the inside.
Exactly. And that mechanism of projection scales up with devastating efficiency.
In what way?
Look at the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. Fascism, Stalinism, they did not materialize out of thin air. They took root in populations fractured by economic ruin and profound existential humiliation.
When things are falling apart.
Right. When the psychological burden of simply existing becomes too heavy, the masses seek relief by abandoning their individual internal watchers and fusing with a powerful authoritarian figure.
And that authoritarian figure offers them a horrific gift, right? Absolution.
Yeah.
The leader essentially says, your pain isn't your fault, and it's not the system's fault. It is the fault of this specific group. The immigrant, the intellectual, the outsider.
Yes. Scapegoating is not an irrational glitch in human history. In the psychic economy, it is a highly functional pressure release valve.
That is so dark, but it makes so much sense.
By locating the quote-unquote evil outside of themselves, the society's collective internal watcher can finally relax its terrifying grip. The society channels its Thanatos into organized violence under the guise of righteousness.
So war isn't a breakdown of our civilized values.
No, war, therefore, is not a failure of civilization. War is civilization's ultimate confession.
That is a staggering way to view history. But let me bring this into the present moment.
Okay, let's do it.
Because it's easy to look back at puritanical societies or mid-century totalitarianism and say, well, they were incredibly repressed. But look at our culture today. We have the internet. We have unprecedented sexual liberation. We have dating apps that offer infinite romantic choices.
We certainly have the illusion of freedom.
Right, and we constantly use therapy language to talk about our boundaries, our traumas, and our desires. Haven't we finally dismantled the watcher? Haven't we solved the neurosis?
It appears that way on the surface, but the underlying mechanism has merely evolved. What's fascinating here is that despite all this supposed liberation, global anxiety about desire and connection has never been higher.
Yeah, that's true. People are miserable.
People report feeling profoundly alienated and numb amidst infinite choice. What we are experiencing today is not liberation, it is displacement.
Displacement.
Displacement occurs when you take a forbidden, raw urge and shift it onto a safe, socially acceptable target. But modern displacement entirely lacks transfiguration.
What do you mean by transfiguration?
Well, in the past, the brutal suppression of instinct occasionally forced that energy into profound creative heights. This is true sublimation.
Can you give an example?
Think of Beethoven pouring the agony of forbidden, unrequited love into the transfiguration of a symphony. Or Michelangelo channeling his intense inner solitude into carving divine transcendent beauty from raw marble.
So the raw energy is transformed into something that elevates the human condition.
Exactly. It's alchemical.
So what does this all mean for us today? Are you saying our modern methods of coping are completely hollow?
I am. We do not transform our pain anymore. We commodify it.
Oh, yes.
We take our profound existential longing and we displace it into a digital void. We post highly curated, aestheticized versions of our private lives on social media feeds, waiting for the algorithmic approval of strangers.
And we use that therapy language you mentioned, but not to heal.
Right. We adopt clinical therapy language like gaslighting or toxic, not to deeply heal our psychic wounds, but to win petty interpersonal arguments and establish moral superiority.
It is capitalism completely metabolizing our dissent.
Beautifully put.
Like, we feel this deep structural unease. We feel the urge to rebel against the crushing weight of modern expectations. And how does the market respond? It sells us a $100 hoodie with an anti-establishment slogan.
Exactly.
It sells us an artisanal adaptogenic beverage to calm our nerves so we can work an extra 3 hours. We download a mindfulness app that tracks our meditation streaks with gamified badges.
It's all a trap.
We feel like we are pushing back, but the system just effortlessly absorbs our rebellion and turns it into profit. The machine loves the aesthetic of resistance as long as you never actually stop consuming.
That is the trap of the modern neurosis. True rebellion would require looking inward and confronting the brutal architecture of your own internal watcher.
Which is terrifying.
Because doing so risks making you a true outcast, a symptom the society must reject. So instead, we accept a state of chronic compromise. We live suspended in a permanent limbo of managed discontent.
Managed discontent.
Yes. We edit our thoughts before they even fully form in our minds. We anticipate the judgment of the digital crowd so instinctively that we self-censor at the level of our own private fantasies.
Managed discontent. That phrase is chilling because we all know exactly what it feels like.
We do.
It is that 3 a.m. feeling. You know, you're lying awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, agonizing with a racing heart over a tiny perceived social misstep you made days ago.
Yes.
Or is that moment you're sitting in gridlock traffic and you feel a sudden terrifying surge of pure rage that makes no logical sense.
When you experience those moments, the most vital thing to understand is that you are not broken.
Really? Because it feels broken.
I know, but that unease is not a personal failing, and it is not simply a chemical misfire happening in a vacuum. You are a living cell inside a massive nervous system that is itself fundamentally neurotic.
Yeah.
Civilization does not extinguish the primal beast within you, it conscripts it. It harnesses your life-giving Eros into endless grinding economic labor, and it ritualizes your Thanatos into acceptable societal competitions.
So the system isn't malfunctioning when we feel this way. It's working exactly as designed. It physically requires our quiet suffering to keep the gears turning.
Exactly. The ultimate goal of examining this hidden architecture is not to magically cure the neurosis. You cannot simply opt out of civilization without inviting catastrophic destruction.
We can't just go back to the woods.
No. The goal is lucidity. The goal is to see the bars of the cage clearly, even when those bars are forged from morality, polite manners, and good intentions.
Right.
You must reject the absolute lie that society relies upon the lie, that you must constantly choose between being a good citizen and being a whole human being.
A whole human being.
Yes. The primal drives that terrify you. The hunger, the fury, the desperate need to merge with another or to destroy an obstacle, they are not flaws in your character. They are the raw, unfiltered material of your existence. Civilization merely manages them, it does not own them.
You don't have to be a stranger to your own biology just to earn the right to belong.
Precisely.
This has been a profound journey into the engine room of our modern world. We started with the central mystery of our time, a society blessed with total physical safety, yet paralyzed by an epidemic of internal misery.
The great paradox.
Yeah. We've traced the autoimmune response of our own morality, the physics of our repressed energy, and the hollow nature of our modern coping mechanisms. And as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, provocative thought to carry with you.
Please do.
We are constantly bombarded by messaging that tells us the ultimate goal of life is to be perfectly compliant, hyper-productive, and flawlessly well-adjusted. We are trained to view our friction with the world as a sickness to be cured.
But it's not.
Exactly. Think about those moments of deep friction. Think about the heavy unease in your chest when you feel utterly out of sync with the sterile, hyper-connected modern world. What if those moments where you feel the most maladjusted, the most restless, the most unable to just smile and go along with it? What if those aren't symptoms of a disease at all? What if that stubborn, unmanageable unease is actually the only proof you have left that your profound primal humanity is still entirely intact?
A vital question to carry forward. Until next time.